Rain pounded against my shoulders, cold enough to bite through my jacket, but I barely noticed. I was kneeling in the soaked grass, mud clinging to my jeans, my arms wrapped around the wooden cross that marked my mother's grave. "Mom, I can't take it anymore," I whispered, my voice trembling in the wind. The rain blurred my vision, but it wasn't just the storm. My eyes were burning with tears I couldn't stop. "Please help me. I don't know how to live with her anymore." The words tasted bitter. I had never begged for anything in my life, not like this. But that night, standing in the small cemetery on the edge of Willow Creek, I felt like a child again, helpless, scared, desperate for someone to tell me I still belonged somewhere. Behind me, the lights of Aunt Verity Sloane's house glowed faintly through the storm, like an accusing eye. She had slammed the door in my face less than an hour ago, her voice still echoing in my ears. "You think you're better than me? Get out of my house, Maribel. And don't you dare come back until you learn some respect." Respect? That word was a joke. I had scrubbed her floors until my hands cracked, cooked her meals, did every chore without complaint, but it was never enough. Tonight had been worse. She'd had visitors, men who stared at me like I was something for sale. And when I refused to sit with them, she called me ungrateful and slapped me so hard my ears rang. That was when I ran and kept running until my knees hit the wet ground here. I looked at my mother's photo, framed on the cross, her soft eyes and warm smile forever frozen in time. "You wanted me to be kind, to forgive. But she doesn't want me to live, Mom. She wants to break me. I can't breathe in that house." My voice cracked, and I pressed my forehead against the wood. "What do I do? Where do I go?" "I just want to be what you dreamed I'd be, a nurse, someone who helps people. Someone who matters." A flash of lightning split the sky, followed by a deep rumble that vibrated through the ground. The storm didn't care about my pain, didn't pause to offer comfort, and for a second I thought about staying right there until morning. Maybe the cold would numb everything. Maybe I could sleep and not wake up in that life ever again. But even in my despair, a small voice whispered, "Get up. Live. You promised her you'd live." I wiped my face with trembling hands, though the rain replaced my tears instantly. "Okay, Mom. I'll try," I murmured. "But I don't know how much more I can take." I sat there until my legs went numb, hugging my knees, waiting for the storm, or maybe my life, to calm down. I didn't know then that the morning would bring someone who would change everything, someone who would prove I didn't have to carry this alone. But at that moment, all I had was the cold earth beneath me, a broken home behind me, and a promise to my mother I wasn't sure I could keep. Life with Aunt Verity had always been hard, but after my 17th birthday, it felt unbearable. Every morning started with her voice cutting through the thin walls of the house like a cold blade. "Maribel, floors aren't going to clean themselves. And don't forget to fix the fence today. I'm not having neighbors thinking we live like animals." There was never a good morning, never a smile. Only orders barked like commands in an army I hadn't signed up for. The house itself told a story of bitterness. It was my mother's home, left to Verity after Mom died, and it carried that tension in every corner. The photographs of my childhood were gone, replaced by Verity's faded floral paintings. My old bedroom had become a storeroom, so I slept in what used to be Mom's sewing room, small, drafty, with one narrow bed and a window that barely opened. I had learned early not to argue, but silence never earned peace. When chores were done, she would find something else, washing the porch, mending clothes that weren't mine, cleaning tools in the shed. And when there was nothing left to clean, she would start in on me. "Look at you," she'd say, eyes narrowed. "You think you're better than me with those books of yours? Dreaming of nursing school while I break my back paying bills? You're lucky I even let you stay here." Her words stung because I was dreaming. Late at night, when she finally went to bed, I studied from the old nursing manuals I'd found in the library. I wanted to help people, to do something meaningful, not just survive from one bitter day to the next. That dream was my one rebellion, silent but defiant. That evening, everything boiled over. Verity had invited Stepan, one of her friends, and another man I didn't know. I could smell cheap liquor before they even stepped inside. "Maribel!" she called, smoothing her hair and adjusting her blouse in the mirror. "Come sit with us. Stepan brought someone nice for you to meet." My stomach twisted. I'd seen how Stepan looked at me before, and this stranger's eyes followed me from the doorway. "No thanks," I said softly. "I have schoolwork." "Schoolwork?" Verity's voice rose. "Don't embarrass me. Sit down. Now." When I still didn't move, she slammed her glass on the table. "You little ingrate." Before I could react, her hand came across my cheek, sharp and fast, the taste of metal blooming on my tongue. "You think you're too good for my friends? Too good for this house? Then get out. Go see how the world treats little girls who think they're smarter than everyone else." The two men watched, amused, one of them chuckling under his breath. That laugh burned hotter than the slap. I grabbed my jacket from the hook and bolted out the door into the night. I didn't even hear her shouting after me. Running through the muddy yard, I only thought of one thing: anywhere but here. I didn't stop until I reached the cemetery, until the world shrank to just me, my mother's grave, and the storm. I didn't know it then, but that moment, her slap, her rage, my flight into the rain, was the crack that would shatter everything holding me back. It was the start of something neither of us could undo. The cemetery was silent except for the rain hammering on the gravestones and the low rumble of thunder rolling through the hills. I stumbled between the rows, my sneakers sinking into the soaked earth, until I reached the old birch tree at the far edge where my mother rested. Her grave marker was simple, just a wooden cross and a small framed photograph of her smiling face, protected by weathered plastic. Even in the dark, that smile felt like sunlight. I dropped to my knees, my hands clenching the wet grass. The cold bit into my skin, but I didn't care. "Mom, I don't know what to do anymore," I whispered. My voice cracked, barely audible over the wind. "She hates me. I can see it in her eyes every day. I can't breathe in that house. I can't even dream there without feeling guilty." The storm whipped my hair across my face as if trying to shake me awake, but I stayed still, staring at that picture. My mother had worked her whole life as a nursing assistant, never finishing her own education because she'd chosen me over everything else. "You're going to do it, honey," she used to say, brushing my hair behind my ear as I studied. "You're going to make a difference." I laughed bitterly through tears. "Some difference? I'm just the housemaid now, and she wants to marry me off to some man who looks at me like I'm property. I can't do it, Mom. I can't live like her. I want to help people, not just survive from one paycheck to the next." Angry at the whole world, my words trailed off as my shoulders shook. A gust of wind sent water streaming down the cross, almost like tears sliding from my mother's picture. Something about that image broke me even more. I leaned forward, pressing my forehead to the cold wood. "I promised you, remember? I promised I'd keep going, that I'd live a life worth something. But I don't know how. I'm so tired, Mom. I feel like I don't belong anywhere." The silence around me grew heavy, and for a second I thought of just staying there all night, letting the storm take me. No chores, no yelling, no fear of tomorrow, just peace. But deep down, another voice whispered, "Get up, Maribel. Live. You owe me that much." I lifted my head slowly, gripping the wooden cross like it was the only solid thing in my life. "Okay, Mom. I'll try. I don't know how yet, but I'll try." I sat there for what felt like hours, numb and shaking, until exhaustion finally pushed me into a daze. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and that was when I heard a voice, faint, uncertain. "Maribel, is that you?" I turned my head, blinking through the dim morning light. Mrs. Eleanor Bates, our elderly neighbor and former school teacher, stood at the edge of the cemetery holding an umbrella. Her eyes widened when she saw my soaked clothes and pale face. "Sweetheart, what on earth are you doing out here? You're freezing." I tried to stand, but my legs gave out, a wave of dizziness washing over me. That was when she rushed over, her warm hands gripping my shoulders. "Oh, dear, you're burning up. Come on, let's get you home." I didn't even have the strength to argue. For the first time in years, someone was holding me without anger, without judgment, and I let myself lean into that small pocket of kindness as everything went dark around the edges. When I woke, the smell of chamomile tea and laundry soap wrapped around me like a soft blanket. I was lying on a small couch in Mrs. Bates' living room, an old knitted quilt pulled up to my chin. For a moment, I didn't move, unsure if everything at the cemetery had just been some fever dream. But then the ache in my body reminded me it was real. My head throbbed, and each breath burned my chest. Mrs. Bates shuffled in from the kitchen, still wearing her raincoat over her floral house dress. "Good, you're awake," she said gently, her voice trembling with worry. "Child, you're burning up. I've already called the clinic. Dr. Reed is on his way." I tried to sit up, mumbling, "I'm fine, really." But she pressed a firm hand to my shoulder. "No, you are not fine. You slept in the rain all night, Maribel. You're lucky I went to visit my husband's grave early this morning, or who knows what would have happened." I wanted to argue, but another wave of coughing tore through me, leaving me weak and dizzy. She shook her head and placed a steaming cup of tea in my hands. "Sip this, slowly." It wasn't long before the sound of a car pulling up reached the porch. Moments later, a man stepped into the room, tall, mid-30s, with kind eyes behind dark-rimmed glasses. His coat was damp from the drizzle outside, and a stethoscope hung around his neck. "Maribel Lane?" he asked softly, crouching down to meet my eyes. "I'm Dr. Cashin Reed. Mrs. Bates called me about you." I nodded weakly. He placed 2 fingers on my wrist, checking my pulse, then gently touched my forehead. "High fever, breathing tight?" "Feels like someone sitting on my chest," I admitted. He listened with his stethoscope, brows furrowing as he moved it across my back and chest. "You've got a nasty case of pneumonia. We need to get you to the hospital for a few days. You'll be fine, but no more nights in the rain, all right?" His tone was kind, not scolding, and for some reason, that simple kindness made my eyes burn all over again. I don't have insurance," I whispered. He smiled faintly. "We'll figure it out. Your job right now is to get well, not worry about bills." He glanced at Mrs. Bates. "Can you grab her bag? She's going to need clothes and personal items for a few days." As he helped me into his car, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the side mirror. Pale face, damp hair sticking to my cheeks, eyes red from tears and fever. I looked broken and I hated it, but when I glanced at Dr. Reed, he wasn't looking at me like I was broken. He looked like he cared, like I mattered. The drive to the hospital blurred together, my head heavy against the seat. I vaguely remember his voice, steady and calm. "You'll be okay, Maribel. You're safe now." For the first time in a long time, I almost believed it. The hospital room was small but warm, painted a soft shade of cream that reminded me of fresh bread in Mrs. Bates's kitchen. For the first 2 days, I drifted in and out of fevered sleep, waking to the steady hum of medical equipment and the occasional beep of a monitor. Nurses came and went with quiet efficiency, but it was Dr. Reed's presence that anchored me. He didn't just check charts and walk out like I'd seen with other doctors when my mom was alive. He lingered, talked, asked questions that had nothing to do with fevers or lab results. On the 3rd morning, I woke to see him sitting by the window, flipping through a patient file. When he noticed I was awake, he smiled. "How's the breathing today?" "Better, I think," I said, my voice hoarse. He checked my lungs, nodding approvingly. "Good progress. You'll be out of here soon if you keep improving." He sat back and studied me for a moment. "Maribel, do you have plans after high school?" The question startled me. No one had asked about my future in years, except to tell me it was hopeless. I hesitated. I wanted to be a nurse like my mom dreamed of being, but things changed. He didn't push. "What kind of nurse?" Emergency, maybe. Somewhere I can help when it matters most. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe even admiration. That's not an easy path, but it's a good one. You'd be surprised how many people quit when things get hard. But you strike me as someone who keeps standing back up, even when life knocks you down. I laughed bitterly. Sometimes I feel like life's been using me for a punching bag. He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. That's exactly why people like you make the best nurses. You know what pain feels like, so you don't turn away from it when you see it in others. You lean in. His voice softened. Don't let anyone steal that from you, Maribel. Not circumstances, not people who can't see your worth. For a moment, I couldn't speak. No one had ever said something like that to me. Not as if it was obvious, as if it was already true. My throat tightened and I blinked hard. Thank you, he smiled, standing. Rest now. You'll need your strength. And when you're out of here, if you want advice on nursing programs, come find me. I mean it. When he left, I stared at the ceiling, the words echoing in my mind. Don't let anyone steal that from you. It was strange how just one person believing in me made the weight I'd been carrying feel a little lighter. For the first time in years, I thought maybe my life could be more than just surviving Aunt Verity's anger. Maybe I could actually build something of my own. I was discharged from the hospital 4 days later. My lungs still sore, but strong enough to breathe without the tightness that had scared me that first morning. Dr. Reed gave me a prescription, a small stack of papers about pneumonia recovery, and a quiet smile as he said, "Remember what we talked about. Don't give up on your dream." Mrs. Bates drove me home in her old sedan, the smell of peppermint gum and lavender lingering inside. I wished the drive would never end. But Willow Creek was small, and soon enough, Aunt Verity's house came into view, its peeling paint and sagging porch looking exactly as I'd left it. She was waiting at the door, arms crossed, face pinched tight. "So you decided to come back," she said flatly, as if I'd run off for fun instead of collapsing in a cemetery with pneumonia. "I was sick, Aunt Verity. Mrs. Bates found me. You think I don't know?" she snapped. "Half the town's been whispering about how poor little Maribel ended up in the hospital. You embarrassed me. Again." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice calm. "I didn't ask to get sick." She waved me off. "I don't want excuses. What I want is for you to stop with these ideas. Nursing school? Moving away. That's nonsense. You have a roof here, food work. That should be enough for a girl like you." A familiar heaviness pressed down on my chest, but this time it wasn't pneumonia. It was the feeling of my life shrinking. "It's not enough," I whispered before I could stop myself. Her eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" I met her gaze, surprising even myself. I said, "It's not enough, Aunt Verity. I want more than just surviving. I want to go to school to be something." She laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You? You think you're special? No, Maribel. You'll stay here, do your chores, and be grateful. Or you can leave, and don't expect to come crawling back. For a moment, I considered arguing, but what good would it do? She didn't want to understand. She wanted control. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll figure it out." Her lips curled in a mocking smile. "Good luck. You'll be back begging in a week." That night, in my tiny room, I sat on the edge of the bed holding one of the hospital's information sheets like it was a ticket to another world. My hand shook as I reached for the nursing manuals I'd borrowed from the library months ago. For the first time, I wasn't reading them in secret. I was reading them as a promise to myself. The next morning, I wrote a letter to Dr. Reed. It was short, awkward, but honest. "Thank you for believing in me. Could you tell me more about nursing programs? I don't know where to start." 2 days later, his reply came, longer than I expected, filled with advice, encouragement, and even a list of scholarship options. He ended with, "Don't let where you are now decide where you'll end up. You're stronger than you think." I stared at his words until they blurred, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. For a while. Those letters with Dr. Reed became my lifeline. Every few days, I'd receive one of his careful replies, full of practical guidance and gentle encouragement. He told me about community college programs, scholarships I might qualify for, even tips on volunteer work to strengthen my application. It was the first time anyone had mapped a future for me that wasn't limited to Aunt Verity's front porch. But nothing stays secret for long in a town like Willow Creek. One afternoon, as I walked back from the library clutching his latest letter, I saw her, Antonia West, one of the nurses from the hospital, standing by the grocery store steps. She watched me with an odd smile, like she knew something I didn't. "Maribel, right?" she said, stepping into my path. Her voice had that sugary sweet edge that set my teeth on edge. "I've heard you've been close with Dr. Reed." I stiffened. "He's helping me with school applications, that's all." Her smile sharpened. "That's cute. You know he's engaged, right? Some big city girl. He doesn't exactly talk about it with patience, but, well," she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Guys like him don't waste time on little charity cases. Don't get your hopes up." I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but something in her tone lodged like a splinter in my chest. That night, I tried to write another letter to Dr. Reed, but halfway through, I tore it up. What if she's right? What if I'm just some pity project? The following week, an anonymous note appeared on the front steps. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. "He's using you for fun. Stop embarrassing yourself." My stomach knotted. I didn't know who sent it, but it felt like Antonia's words all over again, now burned into paper. I stopped writing to Dr. Reed after that. Days passed, then a week, then two. I told myself I was busy with chores and library work, but deep down I was avoiding him. Each time his letters arrived, I left them unopened on my desk. One evening, as I sat staring at the growing stack, Aunt Verity snorted from the doorway. "What's all that? Love notes from your doctor boyfriend." I flushed. "They're about school," she laughed, harsh and loud. "Oh, I see. You really think a man like him would waste time on you? Maribel, wake up. People like us don't end up with people like him. You'll thank me when you stop dreaming so big." Her words echoed Antonia's, feeding the insecurity that had taken root. That night, I shoved the unopened letters into the bottom drawer and decided I wouldn't write again. A few days later, a knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, Dr. Reed stood there, hair damp from rain, holding the last letter I'd sent him weeks ago. His expression was a mix of concern and confusion. "Maribel, did I do something wrong?" "You stopped writing." My chest tightened, shame twisting my stomach. I thought maybe you were too busy, that you had other priorities." He frowned. "Is that what someone told you?" I hesitated, then nodded. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, then resolve. "Can we talk? Because whoever told you that doesn't know me, and I don't want you believing lies about who you are to me." His voice was steady, but there was something fierce under it, like he wasn't just defending himself, he was defending me. And in that moment, I realized I had been wrong, terribly wrong. We sat on the porch, rain dripping from the edge of the roof in steady streams, while Aunt Verity hovered in the kitchen, pretending not to eavesdrop. Dr. Reed rested his hands on his knees, his expression calm but firm. "Maribel, I don't know who told you those things, but they're not true," he said quietly. "I'm not engaged. I'm not using you. The only reason I've been helping is because you asked for guidance and because I believe in you." I swallowed, shame prickling the back of my neck. It was a nurse. She said you already had someone, that I was just some charity case. His jaw tightened. "Antonia," he muttered under his breath, then sighed. "She's had issues with me before. Thinks I spend too much time on patients. But you're not a charity case, Maribel. You're someone who's been given the short end of the stick in life, and you're still fighting to move forward. That's worth investing in, not out of pity, but out of respect." The words hit me harder than I expected, and for a moment I couldn't look at him. "I didn't want to bother you anymore," he shook his head. "You're not a bother. Look, if you don't want me involved, I'll respect that. But I don't want you giving up on your dreams because of someone else's lies. He paused, his voice softer now. And if it wasn't clear before, I care about what happens to you. Not just as a doctor, but as someone who matters to me. That made me look up. His eyes were steady, earnest, without a hint of pity. Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in my chest, almost frightening in its intensity. Before I could respond, Aunt Verity stormed onto the porch, arms crossed. This is ridiculous. She's staying here helping with the house. She's not running off to play Florence Nightingale because you filled her head with nonsense. Dr. Reed turned to her, polite but firm. With all due respect, Ms. Sloane, she's 17. She has every right to choose her own future. She has no future without this house. Verity snapped. A voice from behind startled us both. Mrs. Bates, stepping up the porch steps with a folder in her hand. Actually, she said, her tone sharp, this house belongs to Maribel. Her mother left it to her. I found the original will at the county office this morning. The color drained from Verity's face. That's a lie. Mrs. Bates handed over the document, her eyes cold. No, Verity. The only lie was you pretending otherwise. For once, Verity had nothing to say. She spun on her heel and slammed the door, leaving the three of us standing there in stunned silence. Dr. Reed gave me a small, encouraging smile. Looks like your life just changed again, Maribel. What do you want to do with it? I looked down at the document in my hands, then back at him. I want to start over. For real this time. That night, I sat on the porch alone, the will spread across my lap like a lifeline I never knew existed. For years, I had believed this house, my childhood home, belonged to Aunt Verity, that I had no right to claim anything except the work she demanded from me. But now the truth was clear. This house was mine. I expected to feel angry, to want revenge for everything she'd taken from me. The years of control, the humiliation, the slap that sent me running into a storm. But sitting there under the soft glow of the porch light, I felt something different, something lighter. For the first time in my life, I had power to choose, and I didn't want to waste it on hate. When Verity finally emerged from her room, her eyes were red-rimmed, her mouth tight. She didn't say a word, just grabbed her purse and left, muttering something about staying with a friend. I watched her go, my chest heavy but not bitter. I whispered into the quiet night, I hope you find peace, because I finally found mine. The following week, I moved my things from the sewing room back into my old childhood bedroom. It felt surreal, like reclaiming a piece of myself I thought had been lost. I spent the next few days painting the walls a soft sage green, pulling weeds in the yard, and planting a small row of daisies by the porch steps. For the first time, the house felt like home again, not a prison. Dr. Reed visited often, sometimes to drop off scholarship forms, sometimes just to share coffee on the porch. Our conversations shifted from classes and applications to books, to the strange quirks of small-town life, even to quiet dreams about what life could look like beyond Willow Creek. There was no rush, no promises too big to keep, just the steady warmth of knowing someone believed in me. Mrs. Bates became my honorary grandmother, stopping by with casseroles and reminding me to rest. Healing isn't just about your lungs, sweetheart, she'd say, patting my hand. It's about your heart, too. She was right. I began volunteering at the hospital, shadowing nurses, learning things I had only read about. Every day felt like stepping closer to the life I had whispered about at my mother's grave, that life worth living. One afternoon, as I stood in my freshly painted room looking at the open window and the daisies swaying outside, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of failing, not of being alone, not even of Verity. She had her own pain, her own demons, but they weren't mine to carry anymore. I touched the framed picture of my mom on my dresser and smiled softly. I'm doing it, Mom, I whispered. I'm really doing it. A month later, I found myself back at the cemetery, standing before my mother's grave, just as I had that stormy night. But everything felt different now. The sky was clear, the breeze gentle, and the daisies I'd planted at home were blooming in my hands, ready to be placed at her cross. I knelt, setting the flowers down, and brushed away a few fallen leaves from the marker. "Hey, Mom," I whispered, smiling softly. "Things are different now. I've started volunteering at the hospital. Dr. Reed's helping me with my classes. And the house, it feels like ours again, not a place I want to run from." My voice broke slightly, but it wasn't from pain, it was gratitude. I thought I had to fight for revenge to feel whole, but I didn't. I just had to choose something better. I had to choose me. I pressed my palm against the wooden cross, feeling the warmth of the sun even through the cool spring breeze. I kept my promise, Mom. I'm living. When I stood, I wasn't crying. For the first time in years, the weight on my shoulders had lifted completely. I turned, and there was Dr. Reed leaning against his car at the edge of the cemetery, watching quietly. He smiled when our eyes met. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded, walking toward him with steady steps. "Yeah, I'm ready." The drive back to Willow Creek felt lighter than any drive I'd ever taken. The house waiting for me was no longer a cage. It was a place of healing, of new beginnings. Mrs. Bates had promised to stop by for tea later, and my first day officially shadowing nurses was tomorrow. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine now, shaped by my choices, my dreams, and the people who believed in me. Even Verity, wherever she was, no longer haunted me. I hoped she found the peace I had found. As we pulled into the driveway, I glanced at the daisies swaying gently in the breeze and smiled. "Thank you," I whispered to my mother, to the people who had stepped in when I had nothing left, and to myself for not giving up. Sometimes healing doesn't mean fixing broken people or getting even. Sometimes it just means choosing not to break with them and building something beautiful out of what's left. And for the first time, I knew I was going to be okay.